key factor leading to a slightly greater percentage of younger voters, a slightly greater percentage of African American voters. I mean, the difference between Mitt Romney at 12% and Donald Trump at 16 is Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and the presidency. And now, incredibly, Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly are talking about a crackdown on legal cannabis. They're talking about undoing the famous Holder memo, in which the Obama administration did something that I strongly agreed with, which was to essentially stand down on the enforcement of federal laws pertaining to possession and distribution in the 29 states where cannabis is legal in some form. I think that was good public policy. But now, the Attorney General talks about a crackdown. Terrific story we saw the other day, in which the Attorney General went to the Congress to ask for approval for such a crackdown. And then I saw an interview perhaps 3 weeks ago in which the Homeland Security Secretary, Mr. Kelly, said, and I quote, "Marijuana is a gateway drug." What planet does this guy live on? By definition, if everyone who used marijuana moved on to much harder drugs, we would have millions of heroin addicts today. Where are they? This idea was discredited 20 years ago, yet you still see members of the administration spouting it. And towards that end, I am going to be working with a coalition of Republicans and Democrats, progressives and libertarians, liberals and conservatives, to persuade the president to keep his pledge, to remind the president and to remind the voters that the president took a strong and forthright position on this issue in the election. And in all honesty, it's time for him to tell Attorney General Jeff Sessions to cut the shit. I have elected to join with others, including John Morgan, the prominent advocate and Democratic Party activist in Florida, and Judge Andrew Napolitano, and my good friend Governor Jesse Ventura, Tyler Nixon, who is a great nephew of President Richard M. Nixon, who gave us the war on drugs, perhaps the most egregious mistake of his administration, second only perhaps to closing the gold window, and others in a bipartisan coalition that will have several purposes. One, to urge the president, as I said, to keep his pledge. Secondarily, President Trump could do what President Obama should have done on his way out the door and didn't. Change the schedule of marijuana from Schedule 1 so that doctors across the country can prescribe it for people who need it, who it could help. While we're at it, the federal bank regulators could lay off on banks who want to do business with a legitimate industry that is legalized and paying massive taxes in the states. And while we're at it, I'd like to remind the administration of the hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues that this industry, this legal industry, is generating. You reinforce federal laws against marijuana and you bankrupt the state of Colorado and the state of California and a handful of other states, and you bankrupt the counties. Governments are already counting on, they've already budgeted these funds for what is a perfectly legal and heavily regulated industry.